Hello, herbalists! Nature has a trick it has been perfecting for millions of years. When a flower needs to be pollinated by a specific animal, it sometimes evolves to resemble that animal. So precise, so detailed, so incredibly deceptive that the animal falls for the trap time and time again. And the result, seen from the outside, is one of the most extraordinary things nature has ever created. 20 flowers that look like animals, all completely real. Countdown from 20 to 1. Enjoy! We begin with a Panamanian orchid so special that it's the country's national flower. Peristeria alata, known as the dove orchid or Holy Spirit orchid, has a structure in the center of its white bloom that resembles a miniature dove with outstretched wings, a rounded body, and a tilted head. It's so precise that for centuries the inhabitants of Central America considered it a divine sign. The dove is not accidental. It's the shape that evolved to guide pollinators exactly where the flower wants them to go. This plant, native to the tropical forests of Central and South America, has bright, deep red bracts, modified leaves, that perfectly resemble fleshy lips. So perfect, in fact, that the first time someone sees a photo, they think it's a photo montage. It's not. These red lips are the plant's strategy for attracting the hummingbirds and butterflies that pollinate it. The intense red color is a visual signal that these animals recognize from a distance. When they approach, the real flowers appear in the center of the lips, small and inconspicuous, and these are the ones that contain the nectar. The lips are just advertising. This European orchid has one of the most elaborate disguises in the plant kingdom. The labellum, the central petal, mimics the body of a female bee with astonishing precision. The color, the velvety texture, the pattern of hairs, even the shape of the antennae, it's all there. And the flower also releases pheromones that mimic the scent of a female bee in heat. As a result, male bumblebees land on the flower, attempting to mate, and in the process, they become covered in pollen without achieving anything. They have been falling into the same trap for millions of years. The orchid, meanwhile, produces no nectar. It completely deceives its pollinators and gives them nothing in return. Australia has many strange things, and this orchid is one of them. The Caelana major has a flower that looks like a duck in flight. The labellum forms the duck's body and head, with its beak slightly open. The lateral sepals form the outstretched wings. The arrangement is so accurate that the first European botanist to describe it in the 18th century thought he was looking at a bird perched on a twig. The entire flower measures less than 2 centimeters, and it also fools its pollinators. It mimics the female insects that male sawflies seek out to mate. Nature repeats the same strategies on different continents because they work. A close relative of the bee orchid, Ophrys bombiliflora, mimics bumblebees rather than honeybees. The difference between the two is visible. The body that forms the labellum is plumper, darker, and has a different texture that imitates the bumblebee's distinctive fur. This orchid lives in the Mediterranean, in the fields of the Mediterranean region of Europe and North Africa, and blooms in spring when male bumblebees begin to fly before the females emerge from their nests. The timing of the deception is perfectly synchronized. The orchid blooms precisely when the males are most desperate and least selective. When the Scrophularia ningpoensis plant finishes flowering and the seed pods begin to develop, something happens that stops anyone who sees it for the first time in their tracks. The pods are the exact shape of a miniature human skull. The eye sockets, the cheekbones, even the shape of the mouth. Everything is there with a precision that seems hand-carved. This plant comes from Asia and has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries. But most people who discover it for the first time don't think about its medicinal properties. They think someone must be playing a joke. The tiger orchid is the largest orchid in the world. Not the largest flower, but the entire plant. It can weigh several hundred kilograms and its stems can reach several meters in length. And its flowers have the exact pattern of spots that the human mind immediately associates with a tiger's coat. A greenish-yellow background with dark brown spots distributed irregularly. It's not imitating a tiger, of course. Evolution doesn't work that way. But the pattern is so similar that it's impossible not to see the feline in the flowers. It lives in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia, where it grows on the trees of tropical forests. The genus name says it all. Dracula. Dracula orchids get their name from the 2 long spurs that hang from the flower like fangs. But the species Simia, which means monkey in Latin, adds something more. In the center of the flower is a face. A monkey face with eyes, nose, mustache, and mouth, drawn with breathtaking precision. It lives in the cloud forests of Ecuador and Peru at an altitude of 2,000 meters. It smells like ripe oranges. And the monkey face it forms is neither a coincidence nor a forced interpretation. It's the first thing everyone sees when they look at it for the first time, without anyone telling them. We've done 8, 12 ahead, and the ones that remain are the hardest to describe in words because you have to see them. We continue. This flower from Thailand, Myanmar, and India has a curious history. When the first photographs of it arrived in Europe at the end of the 19th century, European botanists thought they were a hoax. The flower looks like a parrot in flight, with its wings outstretched, tail curled, and beak pointed downwards. Too perfect to be real. But it was real. The Impatiens psittacina exists and continues to exist in the forests of Southeast Asia. And the reason for its parrot-like shape isn't to mimic the bird, but to guide bees and other insects into precisely the right position to collect nectar and become covered in pollen at the same time. The lizard orchid has a flower that resembles an insect or a small lizard dangling from a stem. The upper tepals form the head and body, and the labellum extends into a long, wavy strip that looks like the animal's tail. In the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean, where it grows, it blooms in spring and has a scent that humans find unpleasant, but is irresistible to the flies and beetles that pollinate it. Like many of the orchids on this list, it doesn't offer nectar. The disguise and the scent do all the work. The swan orchid of Central and South America has a column, the central structure of the flower, that forms a long, elegant arch, precisely mimicking the neck of a resting swan. The plant is aware that it has separate male and female flowers, and the male flowers have a more pronounced and elegant swan-like arch than the female ones. It grows on trees in humid tropical forests, and its flowers are pale, almost translucent green, giving them an almost aquatic appearance, as if they were made of crystal. We already mentioned it in the previous video, but it's essential to include it in a list of flowers that resemble animals. The bird of paradise is the world's most famous example of a flower that mimics a bird. And what makes this imitation extraordinary is that it's neither accidental nor a forced interpretation. The orange arc is the bracts. The blue feathers are the petals. And when a real bird lands on the orange bract to drink the nectar, its weight causes the blue petals to open, releasing pollen onto its feet. The flower has designed a perfect landing platform, and the visual result is one of the most recognizable and imitated flowers in art and design throughout the 20th century. The Schizanthus pinnatus, native to Chile, goes by several common names: butterfly flower, poor man's orchid, and Schizanthus flower. The reason it's called the butterfly flower is that its petals have the exact color patterns, veins, gradients, and spots found on the wings of tropical butterflies. Pink, white, yellow, and purple, with lines radiating from the center like the veins of a wing. It doesn't mimic a specific butterfly, but rather the general pattern shared by all butterflies. It's one of the easiest garden plants on this list to grow, and in Chilean gardens, it has been a common plant for centuries without most people truly taking a closer look. We're up to 12. 8 ahead. The best ones are coming. The ones that are hardest to believe are real. We keep going. From the same genus as the monkey orchid, the vampire Dracula is its dark counterpart. The flowers are almost black, with veins reminiscent of an outstretched bat's wing. The long spurs that give the genus its name, those two downward-hanging fangs, are especially pronounced and menacing here. It lives in the cloud forests of Ecuador at high altitudes, in a permanently humid and dark environment that contributes to its creature-of-the-night appearance. It smells of fungi. This is because its pollinators are flies that seek out fungi to lay their eggs, and the orchid tricks them into thinking they found the perfect spot. On the Greek islands and the Turkish coast, an orchid blooms in spring that few tourists notice, even when they are standing on the ground where it grows. The Ophrys Reinhold has a dark reddish-brown lip with a bright blue H-shaped pattern in the center that precisely mimics the abdomen of a specific species of solitary bee. The mimicry is so specific that it only works with that one bee species. If that bee disappears from an area, the orchid cannot reproduce. Its entire survival strategy depends on a single pollinator that it has been deceiving for millions of years. From the same genus as the bee and bumblebee orchids, Ophrys sphegodes mimic spiders. The dark labellum has a bright H-shaped pattern reminiscent of a spider's abdomen, with rounded ends and the metallic sheen of simple eye spots. It lives in the meadows of southern Europe and blooms in early spring. It is one of Europe's most threatened plants because it depends on undisturbed calcareous soils that modern agriculture has drastically reduced. There are regions where thousands of specimens grew 20 years ago, and now only a few dozen remain. An orchid that has been deceiving insects for millions of years is now being defeated by tractors. The snapdragon, that common garden flower that opens and closes its mouth like a dragon or a bunny when squeezed, holds a secret most gardeners don't know. When the flower finishes and the seed pod matures and dries, the pod is shaped exactly like a miniature human skull, complete with eye sockets, cheekbones, and jaw. In ancient times, when Europeans found these dried pods in the garden, they believed they were a supernatural sign and hung them on their front doors to ward off evil spirits. A flower that's a bunny when it's alive and a skull when it dies. Japan has a national orchid that Japanese culture calls sajiso, meaning heron in flight. And when you see the flower, you understand perfectly. The delicately fringed white petals form the wings of a great egret outstretched in flight. The level of detail is such that the side petals curve exactly like the wing feathers of a great egret as it glides. It lives in the marshes and peat bogs of Japan, Korea, and China, and is threatened by the destruction of its wet habitat. There are conservation projects in Japan dedicated exclusively to preserving this orchid, because it is considered part of the country's natural and cultural heritage. And we come to second place with a Mediterranean orchid that many consider the most elaborate and sophisticated mimicry in the plant kingdom. The Ophrys speculum, the mirror orchid, has a bright metallic blue area in the center of its lip, almost like aluminum foil, surrounded by a yellow band and brown hairs that perfectly mimic the abdomen of a female wasp of the species Daciscolia ciliata. But the mimicry isn't just visual. The flower releases the same pheromones as the female wasp in heat, with the same chemical composition. The male that lands on the flower receives both the visual and chemical stimuli simultaneously. It's the most complete deception on this entire list. It lives in the Western Mediterranean, in the limestone fields of the Iberian Peninsula, North Africa, and southern France. And we've reached number 1. The flower that tops this list isn't the most elaborate in its deception, but rather the one that makes the biggest impact on anyone who sees it for the first time. The Dracula simia, the monkey orchid of the Andes in Ecuador and Peru, has a face in the center of its flower. Not a face that resembles a monkey if you use your imagination. A monkey face with round eyes, a flat nose, a mustache, and a slightly open mouth. With an expression. A face with expression. The pattern of spots, the arrangement of the stamens, the shape of the labellum. Everything combines to create something that the human brain instantly identifies as a primate face. It lives at an altitude of 2,000 meters in cloud forests. It smells like ripe oranges. It measures just over 5 centimeters. And it is, without a doubt, the flower that elicits the strongest reaction from people when they see it for the first time anywhere in the world. 20 flowers, all real, all with a reason for being exactly as they are. Nature doesn't paint animals on its flowers for aesthetic reasons. It does so because it works, because millions of years of perfecting a visual trick result in something no human artist could have imagined alone. And what we have at the end of that process is this: a gallery of images that seems invented but is completely real. Tell us in the comments which one you found most incredible. The monkey orchid usually wins, but the mirror orchid, with its double visual and chemical deception, always surprises those who discover it. Subscribe if you want to keep discovering the world of plants every week. And until next time, herbalists,